The third personality of Christ will indeed be known as a great psychic, for it is he who will teach humanity to use those inner senses that alone make true spirituality possible. Slayers and victims will change roles as reincarnational memories rise to the surface of consciousness. Through the development of these abilities, the sacredness of all life will be intimately recognized and appreciated. Now there will be several born before that time who in various ways will re-arouse man's expectations. One such man has already been born in India, in a small province near Calcutta, but his ministry will seem to remain comparatively local for his lifetime. Another will be born in Africa, a black man whose main work will be done in Indonesia. The expectations were set long ago in your terms and will be fed by new prophets until the third personality of Christ does indeed emerge. He will lead man behind the symbolism upon which religion has relied for so many centuries. He will emphasize individual spiritual experience, the expansiveness of soul, and teach man to recognize the multitudinous aspects of his own reality. The third historical personage already born in your terms, and a portion of the entire Christ personality, took upon himself the role of a zealot. This person had superior energy and power and great organizing abilities, but it was the errors that he made unwittingly that perpetuated some dangerous distortions. The records of that historical period are scattered and contradictory. The man, historically now, was Paul or Saul. It was given him to set up a framework, but it was to be a framework of ideas, not of regulations, of men, not of groups. Here he fell down, and he will return as the third personality just mentioned in your future. In that respect, however, there are not four personalities. Now Saul went to great lengths to set himself as a separate identity. His characteristics, for example, were seemingly quite different from those of the historical Christ. He was converted in an intense personal experience, a fact that was meant to impress upon him the personal and not organizational aspects. Yet some exploits of his in his earlier life have been attributed to Christ, not as a young man, but earlier. All personalities have free will and work out their own challenges. The same applied to Saul. The organizational distortions, however, were also necessary within the framework of history, as events are understood. Saul's tendencies were known, therefore, at another level. They served a purpose. It was for this reason, however, that he will emerge once again, this time to destroy those distortions. Now he did not create them on his own and thrust them upon historical reality. He created them insofar as he found himself forced to admit certain facts. In that world at that time, earthly power was needed to hold Christian ideas apart from numberless other theories and religions, to maintain them in the middle of warring factions. It was his job to form a physical framework, and even then he was afraid that the framework would strangle the ideal, but he saw no other way. When the third personality re-emerges historically, however, he will not be called the old Paul, but will carry within him the characteristics of all the three personalities. Paul tried to deny knowing who he was until his experience with conversion. Allegorically, he represented a warring faction of the self that fights against his own knowledge and is oriented in a highly physical manner. It seemed he went from one extreme to another, being against Christ and then for him. But the inner vehemence was always present, the inner fire and the recognition that he tried for so long to hide. His was the portion that was to deal with physical reality and manipulation. And so these qualities were strong in him. To some extent, they overruled him. When the historical Christ died, Paul was to implement the spiritual ideals in physical terms, to carry on. In so doing, however, he grew the seeds of an organization that would smother the ideas. He lingered after Christ, just as John the Baptist came before him. Together the three spanned some time period, you see. John and the historical Christ each performed their roles and were satisfied that they had done so. Paul alone was left at the end unsatisfied, and so it is about his personality that the future Christ will form. The entity of which these personalities are part, that entity which